Hi everyone, my name is Vineet Krishna and I work at the Center for Law and Policy Research. This is the first in a series of podcasts on the Uniform Civil Code. The debate on the Uniform Civil Code started with the framing of the Constitution and has been kept alive by the judiciary as well as the political class. The issue has again been brought to the forefront of public debate with the recent judgment in Shaira Bano case, which invalidated the Triple Talaq. This has also coincided with the Law Commission inviting public consultation on the Uniform Civil Code in October 2016. But before we move to the nuance of the Uniform Civil Code in context of multicultural polity of India, we should begin by understanding the constitutional, judicial, and the political history of the Uniform Civil Code debate. We begin by looking at how the framers of the Constitution debated the Uniform Civil Code in this first part of a four-part series on the Uniform Civil Code. The story of the Uniform Civil Code in the Constituent Assembly begins at the committee stages of the Indian constitution making process. The Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights was tasked with drawing up a list of fundamental rights that were to be incorporated into the Constitution of India. An initial step that the subcommittee took was to request its members to come out with their own personal drafts of fundamental rights. In the submissions of Ambedkar, Munshi, and Meenu Masani, we find provisions that call for the adoption of a Uniform Civil Code. Around the same time, members of the subcommittee were toying with the idea of splitting fundamental rights into two parts, justiciable rights and non-justiciable rights. As the terminology suggests, the former would be enforced by the courts, whereas the latter would not be. After a couple of sittings, the subcommittee submitted its report to its parent committee, the Advisory Committee, with a list of fundamental rights split into two parts. The Uniform Civil Code found itself in the second part, the non-justiciable fundamental rights. It seems like the majority of the subcommittee felt that the Uniform Civil Code provision was best incorporated as a non-justiciable right. Not all members of the subcommittee agreed with this decision. In a dissent note to the report, three members, Meenu Masani, Hansa Mehta, and Amrit Kaur, expressed their views on the Uniform Civil Code as non-justiciable in the following way. Open quote. One of the factors that has kept India back from advancing into nationhood has been the existence of personal laws based on religion, which keep the nation divided into watertight compartments in many aspects of life. We are of the view that the Uniform Civil Code should be guaranteed to the Indian people within a period of 5 to 10 years. Close quote. The dissent note then goes on to demand that the Uniform Civil Code be put into the justiciable part of fundamental rights. About a year and a half later, Ambedkar on the 4th of November 1948 presented the draft constitution to the Constituent Assembly for deliberation. The Uniform Civil Code provision found its place in the Directive Principles of State Policy, which was previously called the non-justiciable part of fundamental rights, as draft Article 35. The text of the Article 35 went like this, open quotes, the state shall endeavour to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India, close quotes. On 23rd of November 1948, the Constituent Assembly took up this provision for discussion. The Muslim members of the Assembly took the lead in this debate and proposed amendments which aimed to do two things. One, introduce provisos to draft Article 35 such that personal laws are kept out of its scope. Two, operationalize the Uniform Civil Code only with the prior assent of the community in question. Muslim members who made important interventions in the debate and opposed the Uniform Civil Code were Ismail Sahib, Nasiruddin Ahmed, and Poka Sahib Bahadur. The arguments they put forth consisted of the following. One, that the Uniform Civil Code provision violated the freedom of religion provisions of the draft constitution. Second, the Uniform Civil Code would create disharmony within the Muslim community. And third, no interference must take place in personal law without the approval of religious communities. Poka Sahib Bahadur went further and attacked the Constituent Assembly in strong terms. Open quotes. Who are the members of this Constituent Assembly who are contemplating to interfere with the religious rights and practices? Were they returned there on the issue as to whether they have got this right or not? Have they been returned by various legislatures, the elections to which were fought on these issues? Close quote. K.M. Munshi, Aladi Krishnaswamy, and Ambedkar took part in the debate and defended the Uniform Civil Code provision. K.M. Munshi made the following points. First, that the Uniform Civil Code was important for unity of the nation and also for upholding the secular credentials of the Indian Constitution. Second, till now the debate seemed to be around Muslim sentiments. Munshi argued that even Hindus were insecure about this provision. He asked the members of the Assembly, how was any reform possible in Hindu society, specifically with regards to the rights of women, if there was no Uniform Civil Code? Munshi then ended by asking the Muslim members as to what exactly is the relationship between inheritance and marriage with personal law. Aladi Krishnaswamy then joined the debate. He responded to the argument made by Muslim members that the Uniform Civil Code would bring about disharmony. He suggested that the Uniform Civil Code would actually do the opposite. It would in fact create amity among the communities. He further paid emphasis on the ability of the UCC to bring about unity in the country. Aladi Krishnaswamy then asked the Muslim members why there were no protests when the British interfered with Muslim religious practices by bringing about a uniform criminal code. At this point, Ambedkar came into the debate. He further emphasized Aladi's point that there was nothing new about the Uniform Civil Code. There already existed a common civil code in the country, except for the areas of marriage inheritance, which are the main targets for the Uniform Civil Code in the draft constitution at present. He reminded the Constituent Assembly that the Uniform Civil Code was only optional. By virtue of it being in the directive principles, the state is not obliged to immediately bring the provision into effect. It can do so when it wishes to. Responding to the initial amendments proposed in the debate, Ambedkar argued that the provision allowed future legislatures to legislate such that the UCC or the Uniform Civil Code comes into effect only after the consent of communities was obtained. Ambedkar's speech was the last intervention in the Constituent Assembly. Soon after, draft Article 35 was put to vote. The Constituent Assembly adopted the article, which would later be renumbered as Article 44 of the Constitution of India. Now let's take a step back. The Uniform Civil Code was a very controversial article during the drafting of the Constitution, similar to the ban on cow slaughter and other provisions. The proceedings of the Constituent Assembly seem to indicate that the decision of placing the Uniform Civil Code in the directive principles of state policy and not the fundamental rights was an act of compromise between members in support and members in opposition of the provision. It was a way for the Constituent Assembly to defer the taking of a decision and allow future legislatures to take a final call. To read the debate in detail, please use CLPR's CAD India website, cadindia.clpr.org.in, and type in Uniform Civil Code in the advanced search. Follow us on Facebook at CLPR CAD India and on Twitter on CLPR_CAD India. In the next podcast in this series, we will look at important constitutional developments related to the Uniform Civil Code in post-independent India with a focus on the Supreme Court. Thanks for now.